Hello everyone, welcome back to Grid Radio, the podcast with our intro where we talk about things which go... I'm your host Nihan and I'm bringing you another episode of Sidepod. We had an incredibly eventful weekend last week with the Austrian Grand Prix and the 24 hours of Spa-Francorchamps. Unfortunately, we were able to get Malakai's opinion on that this week. The racing aficionado himself is busy at Wimbledon. He was able to get a job there, so all the best wishes to him, and hopefully he'll be back next week to record for the British Grand Prix. And I'm actually recording this on the Saturday of British Grand Prix qualifying, so you'll be able to get my reaction to that as well. As we were trying to schedule a time during the week, and it just kept on getting moved and pushed for various different reasons. But then we were able to find a time where we were both available. So here I am bringing you another Sidepod episode where you get to listen to a monologue of me just talking you guys through what happened across the previous weekend and today on Saturday. So let's start off with the 24 hours of Spa, part of the Intercontinental World GT Challenge. Starting, I believe, in February, we had 12 hours of Bathurst, won by the 46 BMW team. Last weekend, we had the 24 hours of Nürburgring, won by the 98 BMW team, I believe, with Augusto Farfus, and we covered that in a previous episode, so please do check that out. And we also saw the Austrian Grand Prix in Formula 1. And this weekend we had the British qualifying, so I'll be doing a breakdown of all three of those events. Starting off with Spa, we saw a new manufacturer claim the top step of the podium at the overall win with the number 63 Grasser Racing Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo 2, with Mirko Bortolotti bringing the car over the line and Jordan Pepper and Luca Engstler putting in their respective contributions. It was an extremely chaotic race with a number of Porsches being taken out extremely early. However, I believe the 96 Porsche came in second towards the end of the race by some miracle. One of the last remaining Porsches in the top class still running. We had a lot of Mercedes DNFs, and Mercedes were looking extremely strong at the beginning of the race, and especially through the middle stint. However, due to a few reliability issues and other problems, they weren't able to finish in the top 5. Speaking of racing incidents, there were so many racing incidents and full course yellows in this 24 hours that a Ferrari, which finished in the top 5, won a lap down at the beginning of the race and was waved by so many times, it was able to put a phenomenal performance. And I think that just shows you the beauty of 24-hour racing, where one incident doesn't define it. You can make you can have an issue, but also if you look at the margin by which the Lamborghini beat the Porsche, it also shows there's no room for mistake, and you have to be alert and switched on, and you're always pushing 100% of the time, otherwise you may slip up. So it's that incredible fine balance of where you can make a mistake and you have a chance to recover, but also consistently being on the edge of your toes, and it's just incredibly beautiful to watch. It was also a bad weekend at the 24 hours of Spa for a McLaren fan. A lot of McLaren's DNFing and having some issues. However, it was a good weekend for Ford, who were a new manufacturer at the 24 hours of Spa, and we saw British hero, I think most of us know him now, Jan Mardenborough, the guy from Gran Turismo, who was given the opportunity from playing a video game in his bedroom, sim racing in his bedroom, all the way to the 24 hours of Le Mans at the LMP2 class, where he was actually able to claim a third place finish. And he just put an extremely solid drive, and his racing, his racecraft is There leaves nothing to be questioned. He defended extremely well against Ferrari in like kind of the early course of the race, and it was just like an absolute masterclass. Now that's enough glazing by me, you can say, of Yamamoto, but he is an incredibly good driver. And it kind of shows you, as long as you put in the work, you take your shot, you can get anywhere, and you can get quite far. Aside from that, we had the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring, and we saw in qualifying Lando Norris, dominating, and Piastri did look solid as well. However, his last lap was hindered due to Pierre Gasly's spin, and we had an incredibly chaotic race start. We had Carlos Sainz's car catching fire again at the Red Bull Ring. There's this famous line from Phineas and Ferb that if every time at the Red Bull Ring, if I had a nickel for every time something happened, I'd have 2 nickels, but it would have happened twice. And it's weird that Carlos Sainz's car catch fire twice at the Red Bull Ring. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't become a tradition of sorts, because fires are incredibly dangerous. We saw that with like Roman Grosjean and Niki Lauda, for example. And I'm just glad to see he's okay. Going on to the race start, we had Kimi Antonelli take out Max Verstappen, which was interesting to see. He kind of just locked up into turn 1, and that was just kind of unfortunate, like with the way the events unfolded. And it was a very incredible race for the Saubers as well, with Hülkenberg and Bortoleto both finishing in the points, and Bortoleto in a close battle with his manager Fernando Alonso towards the end of the race. I think he said, Bortoleto said, "I'm glad I didn't crash, because I would have lost my plane ride home as he was flying with Fernando." So it's good he didn't crash. But we did see, a heated exchange from the McLarens, as we thought we would, after the Canadian Grand Prix. I wouldn't necessarily say there's any ill intent, but Oscar was really pushing the car. We saw him, with a lockup. It was interesting to see kind of how that had more consequences, or like there was dealt with like over the radio. It seemed a bit more like dealt with a bit more harshly, especially with Andrea Sella's comments post race about the whole issue. But I guess I also understand where it's coming from, where Lando was a misjudgment, but in Oscar's case, he lost control of the car with the lockup, and we've seen how bad the lockups can be. We saw Kimi take out Max, and it would have been, I think, a completely different story if Oscar taken out himself and Lando Norris. But they did continue to blood battle, and some people said that Oscar was a bit screwed over with the pit stop by the McLarens, but he was bringing the fight towards Norris towards the end, and he was within a second at one point during the race. But it did show his maturity after that incident, where he didn't try and push through. Obviously, he'd been impeded by Colapinto earlier, in which he made a funny remark that Alpine managed to leap me over after this many years, or something along those lines. But Piastri did end up finishing second, and it kind of showed his maturity, where he stopped attacking. But Leclerc and Hamilton finishing P3 and 4, the best of the rest, and they showed their pace incredibly well. But they still finished 20 seconds behind the leader. Charles Leclerc finished 20 seconds behind the leader, and Lewis Hamilton a further 10 seconds behind. George Russell was nearly an entire lap down at 62 seconds and behind, and 67 seconds behind for Liam Lawson, with the rest of the field being lapped. So it was incredibly interesting to see, and obviously with how short and how fast Austria is, it does make sense. That so many cars were lapped, and we saw how thin the margin of error was in qualifying. But still in F1, but outside of the Austrian Grand Prix, we have seen a tease from Cadillac. I think last time on the pod, me and Malachi discussed Valtteri Bottas's cheeky Instagram video of him saying Cadillac and the free empty seat. Please do check that episode out if you haven't done so already. But Cadillac did post a picture of a yellow car with the number 77 on it. And for those of you who don't know, that was Valtteri Bottas's racing number at Cadillac. So, is that a hint or something? And it would be sensible, and it would make sense of Cadillac that Bottas was part of Mercedes, one of the best teams in Formula One. So he knows the development route, how that type of well-oiled machine does work, and with him as a reserve driver, he's also been able to see kind of like the back-end elements this season. So it would make sense. But I'm not sure whether or not how long he will remain a reserve driver, because there have been talks of Bottas replacing Colapinto, and after Silverstone qualifying, that threat seems to be more and more looming over Colapinto, unfortunately. But the Alpines just again seem to lack a lot of pace, and they qualified P20 and P18 last time out at Silverstone. But there still may be a bit more driver madness yet to come. There have been talks by Italian media, and this is the same journalist company which reported Hamilton's move to Ferrari. Kind of give a tip about that, but they are reporting that Max Verstappen to Mercedes, and Russell hasn't signed a contract extension yet, and everyone's been so hush about it. Everyone's kind of like avoiding the topic like it's the plague, and it's gonna be interesting to see. We heard Verstappen complaining a lot about the car over the radio, but he still managed to put it on pole, so I'm not kind of sure the relationship between him and Red Bull, but to put that piece of rubbish on pole just kind of adds to his credibility as a driver. Ferrari looked extremely quick in free practice, and just did a sensational job. However, Hamilton got into Q2 by the skin of his teeth. Where Ferrari only put one lap's worth of fuel into his car and didn't leave any margin for error, and it's quite unfortunate. And it kind of shows again the lack of, I don't know what to say, but I don't get the strategy decision behind it. Maybe there was one with less weight and just get one lap in, but Lewis obviously sounded extremely frustrated over the radio. However, the Ferraris were the two quickest cars in Q2, putting in sensational laps with, I think Hamilton putting close, if not a 125 flat, and we saw Oscar Piastri exactly match Max Verstappen's time, which was interesting to see. But heading into Q3, we had Verstappen, like I said previously, put the car on pole. Oscar Piastri out qualifying his teammate Lando Norris by 0.015 seconds, and just under 0.02 seconds to separate the top three. George Russell with a 5.029 in fourth, and Hamilton with a 5.095 in fifth. and Ferrari looked extremely quick throughout qualifying, and it's just a shame to kind of see them this low. But obviously, we've seen Hamilton podium here before, and with the weather chaos at Silverstone, who knows what's going to happen? And Hamilton, of course, is a master at the wet and a master around Silverstone. It will be interesting to see also whether or not Kimi Antonelli does get a grid penalty for impeding traffic on the qualifying lap, like Fernando Alonso mentioned. Even Russell said he's moving too slowly on the out lap, but I'm not sure what will come of that. Ollie Behrman is set to take a 10-place grid drop, so he will be starting in P18, and everyone else behind him will be bumped up a spot, which is nice for everyone else, I guess. Yuki Tsunoda did make it into Q2, but he was still about, oh wow, he was just under a second off from Verstappen's final Q3 lap. So I don't know what will happen at Red Bull, and whether heading into next season they have lost their head of design, Adrian Newey, but I wonder, it'll be interesting to see kind of what type of team they will be, because whilst there's been no one like Adrian Newey at Mercedes, they have always experimented. Yes, they had the misjudgment with the zero-pod design, but conceptually it was right, it just didn't seem to work practically, where they had the extreme porpoising, but they have seemed to bounce back, and they are extremely strong. And similarly with McLaren, they've been allegedly experimenting with new materials, new different suspension setups compared to all the different teams, and it seems to be incredibly intriguing. But it's going to be interesting to see, I think, what happens in the driver market with Max Verstappen, and whether or not he will replace George Russell. Where will George Russell go? Because he is a top quality driver, and maybe if Verstappen signs for Mercedes, will Russell want to go to a team like Audi or Cadillac? Another car brand, so to speak, which will give him that backing and maybe make him like the number one driver. And it'll be interesting to see maybe like a Russell Bottas pairing at Cadillac, if that ends up happening. I think the other interesting thing to see is, Bortoleto won Formula 3 and then Formula 2 in consecutive seasons. Now he's in Formula 1, and with Audi taking over the Kick Sauber team and becoming a factory-backed team, will we see, the next Felipe Massa or the next Ayrton Senna come through the ranks? He has an incredible amount of talent. His driving is clinical, and he's matched the experience as a much younger driver of someone much more senior than him. Now, whilst Nico Hülkenberg does not have a podium, he is an overall Le Mans winner, and his driving must not be discredited for that. And he just did an incredibly amazing job, and I think he is one of the rookies to look out for in the coming years. But the Racing Bulls did also seem to be like a tiny bit off the pace around Silverstone, so it's going to be interesting to see. And obviously, if it does rain tomorrow, we saw how much the Red Bull of Tsunoda and Verstappen both, how the rear snapped out a lot, and with the wet, it will be a lot cooler because of the rain, so that's less temperature in the tires, as well as a lot less grip due to the surface just being a lot less mechanical grip, just due to the surface being a lot more slippery. But Carlos Sainz was able to out-qualify Alex Albon in P11, and it's going to be an interesting and intriguing race to see, to say the least, especially with the weather playing in. We saw Hamilton win it last year, and hopefully he can replicate that win, especially for myself, who is a Ferrari fan. So I think I'll just end my rant on the British Grand Prix on that on one point of like Forza Lewis and Forza Ferrari. But I think I'll just return to Cadillac quickly before I end this episode and just talk about their livery. Like, I know it's got nothing to do with racing, which is why I left it to the end. But I actually like their yellow livery, and a lot of people have been quite clinical of it. It reminds me. Some people said it reminds them of the Renault Racing color scheme, but to me it reminds me of the camel livery, actually, the yellow camel livery. And I think it's quite nice actually, and it just gave me like kind of a bit of goosebumps looking at it. And that livery was of course iconic throughout the 1980s and 1990s. And I think I might just end on one more point about the Formula One movie which came out. I watched it the week it came out, the Friday of the week it came out, in 4DX, and it was an incredible experience. I would definitely recommend for people to go and have a look. Yes, there were some inaccurate things as an F1 fan that you would notice, like Eau Rouge and Radion like being the same, but that happens. But it was an incredible depiction, and it showed the world of motorsport. I would definitely recommend watching it in 4DX. However, one thing to note is it moves a lot, and the porpoising, you get to really feel the porpoising as well, I'll say, comparable to the 2022 Mercedes, let's just say. But no, all jokes aside, it was really good. But if you are going for the 4DX and expecting to feel the force of the car, that is not what you will get. You will be like, the movement is based more off the camera movement rather than the actual movement of the car. So that's just like one thing to bear in mind when you do watch the film. But it is an incredible production. I would definitely recommend you guys check it out in cinema. And if you have already watched it, please let me know your thoughts below in the comments. And it's going to be interesting to see, the new F1 fans coming onto the scene, as a result of that movie. It was a incredibly good marketing stunt, and there have already been talks of a second film due to how well it did at the box office. I'm just intrigued to see kind of what story they play. Like me personally, I would like to see an up and coming driver, or rather than like some old retired person, coming through, and maybe Sonny Hayes as a coach, and that will be incredibly interesting. Interesting to see that type of storyline, because right now I know they said they use the same cameras and stuff, like technology from Top Gun Maverick, but the plot also seemed very similar. So in Top Gun Maverick, he had this like dying program, and Maverick comes in and saves the Dark Star, and then also Maverick is brought in as a coach, and he ends up doing the mission himself despite being so old. Then we had Sonny Hayes come in and ends up winning himself, which I just thought was incredibly unrealistic. But I'm no one to comment. Like, it's a film, I understand the realism, but I just thought that the plot lines were way too similar between the Maverick and Formula One films, and I would love to see something fresh and something different we've not seen before. And it was an incredibly good insight, and it was like a typical Hollywood production. I wouldn't say it was made with like motorsport enthusiasts at mind, but yeah, nevertheless, an incredibly good film, and definitely worth a watch. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in, and I hope you have enjoyed my extended monologue and rants this episode. And if you did enjoy, please leave a like, and please do subscribe, and that will help me a lot. Thank you so much, guys. Take care, and until next time.